Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining today's Coffee and Capital, brought to you by the Science Center. Sure, most of you here are familiar, but if you're not, the Science Center is a nonprofit that helps early stage healthcare and tech startups advance their innovations and scale their businesses through a robust suite of commercialization programs and through opportunities to convene with thought leaders like today's session. This morning, we're joined by Kristina Francis. Kristina is the Executive Director of JFF Labs. In this role, she oversees advisory, acceleration, data, and investing initiatives that connect traditional systems with systems disruptors to enable equitable economic mobility. So before we get started, we will hear from Kristina a bit about her work. But before we get to that, let's go around the room, introducing ourselves. It's a good way to get a sense of who's in the room, give context for Kristina, for your questions, and we can all get familiar with one another. You never know who you'll meet here. So I'll start. My name is Jake Britzheimer. I'm program coordinator at Quorum, which is the events and community engagement programs arm of the Science Center. I'm not an entrepreneur, but enjoy these sessions. Love hearing all your thoughts, ideas, and questions. All right, I will see who's on my screen here. I see Tiara. Tiara, if you wouldn't mind, everyone, if you just share your name, your company, even if it's still in the idea phase, and what brings you on the call today.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Tiara Durham, and just a couple of affiliations for everyone. I am a partner with Venture Cafe via Black Girl Ventures. Christina, I was in the process of sending you a text message. And I also am the founder of a nonprofit called Colors of COVID, which is a platform to allow people of color to share their stories and experiences with COVID-19 and the impact it's had on their lives. And just really here to listen, learn, and support.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tiara. All right. Next up, I see Adam.
You're muted, Adam.
Hey, Adam, we can't hear you right now. I don't know if you're connected. It doesn't look like.
Is that better?
Yeah. Loud and clear.
I'm Adam David Jones, the owner of Zier, which is a safety company that uses technology to keep you safe. And have always been a fan of Venture Cafe and the Science Center, and I'm here to listen as well. Thanks.
Awesome. Good to have you here. Thanks, Adam. All right. Next up, I'm just kind of skipping over Martina. If you're there.
Hi, everyone. I'm Martina. I'm the CEO and founder of Laura Health. We are building a care delivery optimization platform that allows independent medical practices to implement novel care models and maximize new revenue stream potential. And we are one of the lucky companies who joined the Launch Lane Accelerator earlier this year, and here to listen and learn.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you, Martina.
Thanks.
All right. Next up, I see Randall.
Hi, friends. This is Randall. I'm out of Harrisburg University. I'm a biotech student and interested in relocating to Philadelphia.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right. Jesse.
Good morning, everybody. How are we doing today? Sorry, I was on a phone call. So I'm here to listen and learn. I own a boutique business management team. What we do is we specialize in business strategy that kind of goes over the focus of such things as marketing, sales, and customer service, as well as internal processes. And I came to hear what Christina has and see what all these great people have, what they're doing. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. Good to see you again, Jesse. It's been a while.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. All right. So we do have a fair amount of Science Center folks on the line. As always, nothing personal, but we can just head on over to the main event. If you guys want to chime in, please do. Feel free to introduce yourselves at any point. But yeah, I'd like to once again introduce Kristina Francis of JFF Labs. Kristina, if you wouldn't mind, maybe just share a bit about yourself, your work at JFF, if you want to talk about Black Girl Ventures, anything else you have going on as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thanks for inviting me to this. I do have my coffee, so hopefully this is coffee and chat. So I think you heard a little bit about my background, but Kristina Francis, Jobs for the Future is, in case anyone hasn't heard of it, a national nonprofit focused on driving economic advancement for all through transformation of the nation's education and workforce system. And I was actually surprised before I even took this job. JFF has been around for 40 years, focusing on economic advancement. And as you all have seen and experienced through COVID, we're seeing 10 years of change in such a short time. And I had the opportunity to take this job and specifically serving as executive director for JFF Labs. Labs was launched about 3.5 years ago, and our work was intended to build new models and partnerships and use technology to scale JFF's work and pretty much respond to the seismic shifts that we're seeing in education and workforce. Part of the reason why Labs was created was that there were too many conversations happening in silos. We had the traditional workforce sectors talking, traditional education sectors talking, the technology companies talking, entrepreneurs talking, but no one was really bridging those sectors together. And that's what we're doing at JFF Labs, bridging the traditional systems with new innovations. And our CEO has challenged us to be, as she says, a bold risk-taking team that helps the whole field just reimagine and drive more equitable outcomes. So I'm excited to have a blank canvas in some cases of which to build upon and really looking at partnerships to do that. I want to go a little bit deeper into some of the areas that we focus on. One is changing behaviors and systems through convening and designing new models. So we have a team that's working on actually incrementally changing behaviors of corporate companies, particularly the largest companies, with the theory of change, that if we can help the largest companies with their behavior change around talent management, who they hire, how they hire, that we can actually then trickle down to small, medium-sized businesses and transform our economy. We also incubate and accelerate new novel ideas and tech solutions. And so we do this in a number of ways, but our last cohort of entrepreneurs and residents, we had 4 of them, focused on varying topics. And one, for example, Michael Collins, focused on how we might promote inclusive economic advancement specifically for Black workers and learners who have faced historical structural barriers in education, training, and just in the economy in general. And he actually just had a great piece published in Bloomberg and Washington Post. I'll drop that in the chat so that you all can take a look at the learnings that he's had over the last couple of months as an EIR. We have another individual, Sharon Liu, who was previously with Department of Education. She's incubating with us now, and she's focusing on how might a nationally adopted credential network provide individuals with agency and empower them to advance through education and careers over a lifetime, right? And so having agency over your own personal data around where you've learned, where you've worked, and other life experiences. And then we have Alex Hernandez, who's with the University of Virginia, focused on how might we invest in long-term career success of working adults without degrees by helping them experience college and develop human skills they need to thrive in this digital world. And then we actually had Shelley Bell of Black Girl Ventures focusing on how might we normalize entrepreneurship as a career option to help spur economic creation, job creation, and mobility. So that was the last EIR program. We have another one coming up here in the fall, and we're going to focus on career navigation. We're not yet announcing who is going to be part of that cohort, but that's the exciting part of this job, is actually identifying up and coming entrepreneurs who are focused on novel ideas. A third area that we really focus on in Labs is finding new and innovative ways that data and digital transformation can be utilized, and particularly in how we help drive change in the workforce by amplifying what is working and what isn't working, and where investments can be made, or more catalytic investments can be made in the industry. And then lastly, we do invest in companies. And so I think it was 2016 was when our Employment Technology Fund was created. And we invest in early stage companies that help train, assess, and connect low income individuals with tools they need to change their lives. And that ETF has about 20 million under management and has made 23 investments today. And I'm happy to go into some of those investments. And in addition to my role at JFF, I serve on several boards and investing groups, all I believe at the intersection of equity, education, and entrepreneurship. So I invest with the Marathon Fund, which is an early stage investment focused on underestimated founders in GovTech, FinTech, and the media space. I'm a board member for an organization called CivStart, and CivStart focuses on connecting tech companies to local state government contracting and opportunities. And of course, right now, the board chair of Black Girl Ventures, where I've been working with Shelly and her amazing team for the last almost 3 years now, connecting Black women founders to capital, community, and resources. BGV, as Tiara mentioned, is in Philly, Miami, Houston, DC, New York, and growing. I can't name all the different places, but huge opportunity to not only connect those founders to capital. We talk about social and financial capital with Black Girl Ventures, but I think the big part of that is the community that Shelly has created, and creating this national community that's really felt on the local level. And then let's see, I'm a wife of 18 years. I've got 2 kids. Son went back to school yesterday and super excited that he'll be around kids his age during the day and not under his mom and dad and sister. And so thrilled to be here this morning. Thanks to Tiffany, Heath, Eli, and the team. So I'm happy to have dialogue.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christina. I saw we had a few folks join as Christina was speaking, some names I recognize. So if you do have questions, please feel free to introduce yourself to the group when doing so. But yeah, anyone, we can jump right in. Feel free to come on screen if you have questions for Christina here. But I'm happy to get things started. So Christina, I was curious, you were talking about behavior change for companies, and I think you mentioned telework. Given that you work so much with education and workforce, which are 2 areas that have been, many areas have been impacted by COVID. It's no secret, but they've really been flipped on their head and have been approaching things differently than they've had to in ever, really. So I was just curious how that's affected the companies that are approaching you. Have you seen any new ideas coming out of this past 16 months or so?
Yeah, I am, our ETF team has been slammed, to say the least. I think we're seeing huge investments in ed tech and workforce and just future of work and future of income. I think we're seeing new terminology and semantics around that work. And as you all know, there's just significant growth opportunities in employment. There's 75 million people prior to COVID were without jobs. We're seeing a lot of people changing jobs. I think there's a statistic that says Americans hold 12 jobs in their working lives. And now we're seeing people changing jobs every 12 months. So significant opportunity, I think, for companies to come in. We are seeing, we look at learning assessments, we look at, online learning space. And so we are seeing lots of opportunity. One actual investment that we made, I think is the first one that I was a part of when we came on board, was Charger Help. So they are based on the West Coast, and they built a workforce of technicians that are serving electric vehicle charging stations. So Camille Tarian, Yvette Ellis. So not only are they training people, but they're providing living wage jobs today while providing skills of the future. And I think we're starting to see more of those types of companies that are at the intersection of new emerging tech, as well as a kind of a workforce component where they're able to identify and be job creators for new skills of the future. Another company that we've invested in is Factory Fix. It's an online recruitment and hiring platform for the manufacturing sector. And they connect a wide range of manufacturers with skilled tradespeople. And so we're starting to see companies, particularly manufacturing companies, other companies trying to identify where the talent lives and sits and how they might attract them more in a consumer facing way. So lots of new opportunities, new models that we're seeing, new partnerships that we're seeing in the space. And I think in terms of telework and companies and what they're doing, we have a lot of companies that come to us to ask for our assistance in developing their programming around work-based learning programming, or to get insights on what other companies are doing around remote workers and learners, around hiring. And so our impact employer model and corporate action platform that's run by Kat Ward, we bring together top Fortune 500 companies, and typically those in HR or diversity or other areas come together. One, they learn from one another of what they're doing and share best practices. But then we also have a playbook, and we published a playbook of the recovery playbook to support, it collects all the learnings that we collected from the Fortune 500s, but it provides a playbook for corporations to follow as they are working and continue to work through this recovery period. So hopefully that answered part of your question. And again, I'll drop some of these links in the chat as we go through. Any other questions, any areas that you all want to dive into?
Well, if no one has a question right now, and please feel free to cut me off if you guys do. But yeah, I was curious, have there been any interesting collaborations between the companies that you work with? I mean, they're all kind of in similar spaces, so I wonder if any partnerships have blossomed.
There have been. So there's a large Fortune 500 company that JFF has been working with. And ETF actually invested in a mentoring company. And we've also started partnering with a tech company. And so we've all kind of come together to build a coalition really focused on how might we help colleges and universities provide social capital to their students. And so we're taking this mentoring company and infusing it into some of the work that we're doing to help students connect to mentors that are in the workforce and workspace that look like them. So that I'm really excited about that kind of public-private partnership that we've created and testing out. Another is that Jobs for the Future is a founding member of Skill Up. I don't know if you all have heard of Skill Up, but it's a consortium of several companies working together that's taking a really regional approach to helping to upskill individuals. And so we've taken that to the Bay Area. I think we're in Philly in that area now as of a couple of weeks ago. And so really excited about how we use a technology platform to connect employers and job seekers and upskilling job seekers and accelerating their ability to connect to jobs and get in what we're calling good quality jobs that are family sustaining wages. And so that's really exciting to see that come into fruition and scale and grow. What I've been excited about is JFF is in all of the states. And so and it's my role of JFF Labs is to find out where else can we take these partnerships, expand and grow. Who else needs to be part of that ecosystem, whether it's training providers, talent, and or new corporations. And when we look at, again, new corporations, while we focus historically on Fortune 500s, I think as entrepreneurs scale and grow their businesses, early startups, we want to get them engaged in that process as well. Because I do believe there's lots of opportunity for job creation and variety of work and career as we bring those partnerships together.
Jake, I'll jump in if you don't mind. Christina, I'm going to ask a quasi-loaded question, but it might be interesting for some of the folks. So if you would sort of describe, I mean, I know you have the ETF and there's other things that you're involved with, like Marathon and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So when you talk a little bit about JFF's ETF and sort of what the typical deal size is and sort of what are the criteria you're looking for, and how and what role, if any, syndication and partnerships play within all that. That might be interesting for the group.
Yep, absolutely. So ETF typically, excuse me, we're looking at pre-seed, seed, some flexibility with Series A, and actually we just made a Series B investment in Forage, and I'll talk a little bit about how we got there in a second. Investment size is typically 100 to 500K with reserve for follow-on. In the structure, we do primarily equity with some flexibility for debt and grants. And I'm excited that we have that flexibility as we are an impact fund. So typically what we do in terms of sourcing, like many, we attend events hosted by accelerators or incubators. Our team has what we call a syndication with other future of work funds. And so we share, and I've been over the last couple of months, lots of deal sharing going on. It's just been a flood of new opportunities in the industry. We do review the pitch decks, screen, meet with entrepreneurs to really understand their impact and business model. I think what's unique about ETF is that while we have an impact investment fund, we have JFF Labs as the innovation engine. We have all of JFF and the networks for JFF. Again, as I mentioned, JFF has been around for about 40 years, and we have networks with community colleges, with four-year colleges, with training providers. We have a Center for Apprenticeships. And so lots of practitioners and knowledge in the education and workforce space that we bring in to work with our portfolio companies. And I think that's a really exciting thing. We have a policy team that helps to inform and provide our portfolio companies with how new legislation may impact them or how they might leverage that in their favor. We've seen that in the case of Charger Help. And then, of course, our due diligence, we're able to bring those individuals in as well. We are looking at, I think, all types of companies across the spectrum. So I mentioned learning and training companies. So companies that are providing access to training, online learning, upskilling. We're looking at assessment. So how might corporations or individuals even assess themselves and to be able to show and demonstrate skills. We're looking at wraparound services right now is a huge area where we're seeing opportunity. So that's paying for childcare or income share agreements or other future of financing opportunities for education and workforce. I expect that area to grow tremendously over the next couple of years. We're looking at, I think someone mentioned kind of the care economy and how are we helping to upskill healthcare workers in new and different ways. We have a company, Embodied Labs, that uses AI to help individuals learn what it means to be impaired in other areas. And so that's taking off, particularly working with firefighters and policemen and women so that they can understand the people that they serve more. So that wraparound service area, lots of activity on that side. Hopefully that answers part of the question, Heath. If there's another area that you want me to dive specifically in, I can do so.
Well, I thought that was great, and thank you for sharing that. I think one thing maybe for the group, and I know where you have it is that you alluded to it, but the fact of the matter is with JFF's reach, you're not only providing capital, you're providing access to markets too, right?
Exactly.
And maybe talking a little bit about how that differentiates y'all from dumb money versus smart money type stuff. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's great to get a check, but is it better to get a check plus a market type thing? Maybe talk about that in your experience.
It's interesting. I was just at ASU GSV and talking with several entrepreneurs in the space, and we've seen this particularly over the last 6 to 8 months is, and in the industry alone, I think valuations are getting high again, right? And people are trying to get into deals really early. We've had several companies come to us and say, we want ETF in this deal, and they've earmarked funds for us. And the reason why they want us there is because they have access to our networks. One of the things that we do is what's called beyond the investment. So once we make the investment, we're also looking at our network to help potentially pilot these companies and to give them access to customers either that they haven't had access to or that would help them scale and grow to meet their next milestones. And that gives them direct access to getting customer feedback and then more exposure, again, across our networks, as I mentioned, the community colleges, four-year colleges, corporations. And so whether someone's looking at kind of the corporate learning space, we're able to bring in our corporate partners to provide insights to those companies as they grow. This may mean that through our networks, they meet someone that they can bring on their board that has lived experience and opportunity to influence additional connections. We have, credentialing companies that come in and we can connect them to our partners like a Credly or someone else who's working in that space and potentially engage them in partnerships. We have our job companies that are looking at job search and placement. They're looking at labor market information services. And we, through our work-based learning team or work unit team, bring in people who have deep knowledge in burning glass and MC data, for example, to help those teams further refine their outcomes and measures that they use in their impact reports. And then, as I mentioned, just around kind of some of the wraparound services, connecting people to our policy team and to others. And so I might be biased, but I think, if you're in the future of work ed tech space, JFF, if we're able to make an investment, it's not just the investment that you're getting, it's beyond the investment that really makes that big difference. I think another unique area that we are working on is, as we're looking at pilots and piloting, we're also bringing in voices of workers and learners. And so if the population or the customer base is looking at certain populations, we are helping to identify populations that can help these companies test out their tools, their solutions, and they can get feedback from these populations and then hopefully incorporate some of that feedback into the next stage of that tech platform or service. So it's really an exciting area. And we're bringing all hands on deck, right? All hands on deck right now, because we want our portfolio companies to be successful. I think it also gives us an interesting perspective on what's happening in the US education and workforce markets. And I think another trend that we're seeing is some global companies or companies that are not US based wanting to get into the US market. And so they are reaching out to us to gain insight in kind of competitive landscape. And so we find ourselves in that position as well to help inform and then get early insight into some of these new up and coming players in the space. I know that was a mouthful, so.
No, thank you, Christina. I'm going to go ahead and ask some questions. I'm sure there are others. Jake, did you have something else? Or Eamon, you had something in the chat you lobbed out?
Yeah, or Eamon, I saw you on mute. Did you want to ask it? Okay, cool. Yeah, so Christina, Eamon asked, where are emerging areas of opportunity for family sustaining wages? Is it region specific, local specific? Are there any larger trends at play? And what are the wraparound services that are being added to the trainings to help people holistically?
Those are all very good loaded questions in and of themselves. So I will start with trends around family sustaining wages. I think one is influencing companies and organizations right now to actually reach those family sustaining wages. And so we've seen in the news reports on Walmart and other companies that are making adjustments, Amazon that are making adjustments to paying their workers family sustaining wages. And so I think part of the role that JFF and others play is to inform our networks, our stakeholders of where changes need to be made and putting some pressure and influence there. One of the areas that we work, one player in the field, 110, I don't know if you guys have heard of 110, but they're focused specifically on Black workers and learners and providing access to jobs. And so they have corporations that have signed on to support them, and they're identifying training providers that they believe can help accelerate. And that combination of partnership we're seeing is really pushing that family sustaining wage opportunity. In terms of region specific, we are seeing, again, kind of these sectors come together, a combination of economic development offices working with incubators and accelerators that are working with VC firms and angel groups that are working with universities. And so as we see that come together and we look at the labor market data and insights, we're able to help identify the types of jobs in that area that provide family sustaining wages. Jobs that are in Atlanta that provide family sustaining wages may not be the same jobs we're seeing in Iowa or Texas. And so our teams are looking at those regional sector opportunities and helping where we can influence and bring together those specific players. In terms of, I think, some of the larger trends in wraparound services. So I mentioned kind of the future of financing education, and that's a huge opportunity. Again, we saw in the news, Walmart is now paying their employees to basically to get college education, free college through corporations. Huge change. And now it may seem small right now, but the impact of this, and as more corporations take this trend on, the competitive landscape for universities and what it means to be educated and kind of that career trajectory, I think, changes over time. The good thing is, from a consumer perspective or an individual, there are more choices. I think the hard thing is, how do we inform those choices? And so we're looking at career navigation, right? And how do you provide the information and awareness of programming, of colleges and universities, of corporations that can help an individual get their first job and then help them on a trajectory grow within their career. And so that's a really exciting area, and one that JFF is looking at hard right now. We're looking at that post-secondary kind of innovation and marketplace, and again, kind of what it means for career and lifelong learning, kind of going in and out of the workforce and building your knowledge over time, more in a stackable way. So if you think about college historically being a 4-year experience, another article I'll put in the chat is our big blur. We're now looking at what happens after 10th grade and what might we do differently from 11 to 14 or 11 to 18 years in helping students to have different experiences. And so, for example, an individual may go to high school in the 10th grade, take on an internship or an apprenticeship program, then may go to community college for a few years and then go back into a work-based learning program with a corporation. And through that may then figure out that they want to focus in a specific area and then go to college and learn. And so how might we create those learning opportunities differently than we have in the past? And I think that's exciting. It's heavily exciting for me because of the equity that it provides, particularly for, in the case that we're looking at, Black workers and learners, but we're also immigrants and others who are coming and entering the education system at varying points. I think it provides more access, and that is what we are pushing. Again, our goal is economic advancement, and so whatever we can do to create more career navigation opportunities is where we're focused. So I think that's a huge trend and one to look out for. Iman, does that answer your questions? Do you want me to dive deeper into any specific area?
No, that's great. I mean, the Science Center, we have STEM and STEAM education programs starting with middle school and high school. We have a workforce development program that's really focused around upskilling, particularly with biotech companies for folks without a college degree here in West Philly. And we have a couple of companies in our incubator that are working specifically around workforce development issues with holistic approaches and using trauma-informed care approaches for a lot of those pieces. And so just trying to think more about what's going on. It's not an area where I'm as educated as I'd like to be. And it's great to hear about the good things JFF is up to. So thank you.
Yeah, there are a few other, one of the things that I focus on a lot is our partnership model. And so I want to kind of amplify two organizations that I think are doing terrific work. So one is the U.S. Dream Academy, and they are actually working with children of formerly or current and or formerly incarcerated parents and looking at how do they provide intervention and opportunity for those children to prevent those individuals from going in that same direction. And I think that multi-generational approach is a huge impact and huge impact potential. And so we're looking at how do we help them to identify training providers that they can bring in early on for for youth and for younger individuals, and then build their credentials and understanding over time. Another is EdFarm. They're in Birmingham, Alabama, and Wayman Jackson, who's the CEO of EdFarm, is also the CEO of Propel Center that is in Atlanta. If you haven't heard of them, you may want to look them up. I think the interesting thing of EdFarm plus Propel, you're starting with children, and then you're moving them across the pipeline into colleges and HBCUs. And so what would a world look like if we are providing youth with access to the best technology early on, and their understanding of the types of jobs that they can have, and continuously, I don't say intervene or providing intervention. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean that in a infusing opportunity early on, so that these individuals can then move into high school programs, college programs, and the colleges will be able to see that trajectory moving forward. I just think huge opportunity for transformation, access, and equity. And so that's another model that I'm paying close attention to. And then your point on trauma informed, I think we're seeing a lot of new models around mentoring. I mentioned the mentor method as one, but there's counseling, and how do we do career counseling differently? What we found during COVID is that, there's a story of a 16-year-old 16-year-old boy who was going to be the first to go to college in his family. Really excited. He was a junior applying for colleges, and COVID just canceled his opportunity. His mother got really ill, so he was left to take care of his younger siblings. And due to that, he could not work as many jobs, and he's no longer going to college, right? And so it was an exciting dream for him that's changed. And so we're looking at how do we prevent that? How do we support individuals like him that need those wraparound services, not only career counseling, but just support, transportation support, motivational support, and support in being able to answer and ask the questions so that they can move forward. And so starting to see a lot of partnerships and opportunity in that area as well. Thanks, Iman. You got me on a roll on some of those questions. Appreciate it.
Cool.
I have a question.
Oh, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So when I think about JFF Labs, I see it as, and I could be wrong, but I see it as kind of an intersection between employers and equity advancement and ESG from a corporate perspective. And so I'm wondering if there's work that JFF is doing specifically to inform ESG metrics. I know the metrics have been soft in the past and haven't been as deep as they need to be to show true change, specifically in social impact. Is JFF participating in an effort to develop that more robustly with corporate advisors?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that, overall, JFF is actually developing an impact measurement outcome framework internally for ourselves, right? So I want to start there because I think it's important to start with our own internal before we're able to expand that. And we're doing so because what we realize is even in our storytelling, there are areas that we didn't have the data to actually appropriately tell the story of our impact. And so we want to change those impact measures, and we're developing that now, and in many cases in partnership with, I mentioned our corporate action platform, and impact employer model. We're taking findings from that, infusing it in our own impact measures, and then having conversations around what does good look like, right? What does it mean to be a good employer? What does efficacy look like around a training program? And so we are building a metrics tool or index, so to speak, around like quality provider, and building that index out so that we can evaluate whether or not we believe there's economic advancement opportunities there. I think around just working with corporations and their ESG, it's a good inflection point for everyone. to look at their metrics to see if they're capturing the data that allows them to evaluate their own effectiveness. And so we have fee-for-service projects that we're working one-on-one with employers to help them define what that means. And again, working within that peer group and sharing best practices around that. I don't have specifics on some of the metrics, but I'm happy to share, get some of those and share one-on-one or in a smaller group with folks that are interested in diving deeper into that. But I think it's a fascinating area right now, but an inflection point that we all are feeling.
Thank you. Thank you. I would definitely love to learn more about some of those metrics. It's a budding interest of mine. So, and I know everyone can do more in that space. Thank you.
And one of the projects that we're working on was funded by Google is an opportunity for outcome initiative where we are working with workforce boards, for example, not corporations, but workforce boards to help them understand the data that they have and provide better storytelling so that they can help job seekers better make decisions about where to go or what they can do. And I think that's another fascinating area. Oftentimes we don't think of workforce boards as change agents, but I think in this coming world, if we enable them with data and the tools that they need, we'll start seeing more advancement around what's working, what's not working, and help to influence opportunities for catalytic investments and change.
Great. We had a question from Katie in the chat on the topic of training. She says, we're hearing a lot about moving beyond the job-specific training model to entrepreneurship as workforce development. How do you think we make a compelling case for that effort?
So Shelley Bell, who is one of our EIRs, is actually going to come out with a paper around this. But I think what's interesting, what we've talked about through her EIR experience is what are the skill sets of entrepreneurship? What do people learn as an entrepreneur? And what we found is that the skills that individuals are learning as an entrepreneur, actually, they map to the skill sets that corporations are looking for. And so one hypothesis is that we believe people are going to move in and out of entrepreneurship in the workforce. And so one, creating that opportunity for people to move in and out of that, and understanding that as people are building companies, they're building skill sets as well. And so making sure that economic development organizations and workforce boards are working together and in bringing in entrepreneurs as part of that ecosystem that they support, and not just job seekers that are going into the job. I think the other part is, particularly now as we're seeing a boom with more companies being created, is that those are our job creators. I was actually talking with our lead on the corporate space. Over the last year, we've seen so many new companies IPO, and they're now part of the Fortune 500. So where they weren't a part of that before, they are now. And so seeing that growth and trajectory of small and medium-sized businesses, I think entrepreneurship has to be and is critical to economic development and workforce development. And I think I mentioned earlier some of the regional work that we're seeing where economic development offices are working with universities and corporations. I mean, that's the type of ecosystem that, if is solid and works together, can grow and expand an economy and a local economy pretty quickly. So for me, it's a must-have, and we're pushing that.
I have a couple questions and a comment, please.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing. So as you were talking, I was actually looking through the playbook, and that's a fantastic paper. I would thought it was a white paper, but it answered one of my questions. That you guys are a nonprofit, but please answer firstly, what's JFF stand for?
Oh, very good question. I'm sorry if I did not mention that earlier. Jobs for the future.
Ah, fantastic. So third question, and something I'd love to talk to you, is that you come here to answer everyone's questions, but no one ever asks, as a group here, or at least myself, what can we do to help you?
Oh, I like that question. So okay, that's a great question. I'd love to, first, you asked a question on what does JFF stand for? And we get that a lot. And that means we've got to work on our branding a bit, but I apologize, I did not mention Jobs for the Future. So when we say that, I'm curious what you would expect of a nonprofit organization that's focused on jobs for the future. What's one thing that when you hear that, you're like, oh, they must do X. I'd love to get some feedback on the expectation based on our name and our position.
Was that pointed out to me or to the group?
Either.
Funny enough, I would probably be opposite of what people would think is job training, is actually going to the tip of the spear and preparing the corporate for the people moving in. You did mention about the entrepreneur space moving up and in, which I think is actually fantastic and brilliant, because there's a vacuum gap creating, because I see the structure of corporate enterprise people that have been in that space all their life and moving out to start their own IPOs. And so there's going to be a space in corporate that needs new, fresh people that aren't corporate bred, and that it's going to be entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to challenge her. I have my own thing, Christina. You and I have talked about this before, but I think this is a really important thing that we can be helpful to Christina on. Just if anybody would just, I think you're basically asking just what is the perception of the name and how does that fit? So if anybody has anything to lob over, you know, whether it's like, oh, I think it's a workforce thing or a tech thing or whatever it is, that's what you're looking for, right, Christina? No, anybody?
Yeah, I mean, when I hear jobs for the future, I definitely hear that workforce component. I would, without looking into the work you do, kind of see it as a employee connections, you know, platform, you know, connecting people to jobs and career services.
Yeah, and one other ask I would have, I'm going to put this link. This is an op-ed that Michael Collins has been with JFF for about 17 years, and it's now an EIR, really building out a point of view and strategies around racial equity in education. I'd love, one, for you to read the article, and then two, for you to post it and share it with your networks. I think it's a powerful article right now, and one that I hope encourages more public-private partnership and more interrogation of the efficacy of programs and opportunities, particularly for Black workers and learners.
Yeah, thank you for putting that in there. We will be sending out an email later this afternoon, so I've made sure to save the chat here in case anyone wants to get back to these after the call. I was curious though, Christina, are part of the services that you offer to companies you work with, is there any kind of team building component if someone comes to you with an idea, or at what stage, like, do most companies come to you at? I know it's earlier stage, but
yeah. For JFF, it's interesting. We've got folks that come to us who have an idea, and that's why we actually have so let me actually, that's a great question. Let me lay out from idea. So we do something called market scans, and we've written market scans that look at different technologies across workforce and education, whether it's immersive technology, learning tools, and we surface those and share those with industry. And so we have VCs that often come to us that have looked through those scans to help as they're going through due diligence with companies. So we start by helping to surface companies across the board. We have individuals that have ideas that they present to us because they want to come work with us as an EIR. And that can be you know, an idea on paper. We often meet with them. And if it's a match for our strategic pillars and what we're looking at, and for we might bring those individuals on as EIRs. We have had cohorts that we accelerate, and typically these are companies that are in growth mode that could leverage JFF's network to scale and grow. And so companies like Immersion That's an AI company helping train through AI, or other companies, we help them accelerate. And then we've got ETF, which is the early stage investment company, or I'm sorry, early stage impact investment fund. And so we help companies through that stage. Again, I mentioned earlier that we did make a Series B investment. And so I anticipate that over time, we'll also get into later stage investment, but typically what we do is we syndicate and support our entrepreneurs for either follow on with us or through those later stage. And so we're trying to make sure that we're supporting entrepreneurs through the entire process, especially those that are in the workforce and education space.
Excellent. Oh yeah, comment here from Kristen on the question about what we think of or what comes to mind with jobs for the future. I first think of STEM jobs in emerging fields, but also the way in which we train people for those roles and connect them with opportunities. Examples, higher touch, hands-on, industry informed mentors, apprenticeships.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think I'm excited that we are in the position, one, that Jobs for the Future has been around for 40 years, so really anchored in economic advancement, and that we're at this point where we are pushing a bit to reimagine what this space looks like and the role that JFF as a national convener can play, and making sure that everyone has a pathway to economic mobility. And that's really the goal at the end of the day. And so where you all are, in terms of the companies that you have or that you work for, ideas that you have, if we can be of support or service to you, I invite you to reach out to me, and happy to connect one-on-one or to connect you with others within the organization if there's interest.
Awesome, thank you for that. We do have a few minutes here for questions. Christina, though, I wanted to take the spotlight off of JFF for a moment, but I saw that Black Girl Ventures has pitch competitions coming up in their calendar. And knowing that we have a few founders on the call today, I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about those competitions, what someone who's never attended one could expect, what's the value in participating, that kind of thing.
If you've never been to a BGV pitch competition, you are in for a treat. It is not your typical pitch competition. So one, you should go for the experience. And I think Shelley she's got a background in poetry and arts. And so it is an experience, and it reflects the culture and the women that she's supporting. One of the things that BGV has done is kind of flip the pitch competition on its head. So we typically start with the pitch competition to infuse capital for those entrepreneurs. And then they go through a training program and working with Shelley and the team on their business, whether that's honing in on their team and who they're hiring, making sure that their pitch is sound around the product or service that they're providing, making sure their financial model is solid so that they can get new customers. And the other is introducing them to a customer base or expanding or amplifying them so that they can connect to customers. The other component is really looking at the supplier diversity, right? And so how do we help position companies that are going through the BGV community and training to connect with supplier diversity of corporations? I think that's a game-changing connection that Shelley's been able to make with many of the women that go through the program. I think the other opportunity during the pitch competition, individuals will pitch. Black Girl Ventures has a platform called Raisify. And so anyone can go on to Raisify, hear the pitch, and actually donate. And so it's a crowdfunding opportunity as well. So, one example is Shelley's been partnering with many brands. For example, Nike sponsored a pitch competition and had several women go through it. And the nation was able to watch and actually also invest or donate alongside. And that money is given to the entrepreneur as they grow. So, yep, Shelley's been on billboards as well. So I think I will say the Nike partnership with BGV has been a really powerful and interesting one. And I think Shelley is the first entrepreneur solely that they put on a billboard. And so to have a Black woman amplified by Nike was tremendous. And the impact that had and has on the community that she's serving, I think is even more powerful. And so I invite you, there's several, where this is pitch season. So the fall is pitch season. And I invite you to attend one and hopefully, provide funding for one of the companies that you've enjoyed watching. And I'd be eager to hear back your experience after going through a BGV pitch competition experience.
Awesome. And are they going to be in person, or is that kind of up in the air at the moment?
Yeah, right now, thanks for asking that. So right now, I think BGV was one of the first pitch competitions to go online. So right now they're online. We've seen an increase of enabling people to participate in those. Safety comes first. And so right now they're all going to be online. When we're ready to go back in person, we will, but I think right now they'll all be on online.
Cool, makes sense. All right, we have just a couple minutes here. Unless we have any other questions for Christina. Christina, is there anything going on at JFF or anything else at Black Girl Ventures that you'd like to throw out to the group, get people informed?
I would say follow JFF on LinkedIn and Twitter, follow BGV on all the social medias. I think she's going to start working with TikTok as well, just to stay informed. And where you see a partnership opportunity or an area where you can help, let's connect. I think that there's power in partnership. I say that often. And so don't be afraid to reach out, or no idea is too crazy, right? And so I think we owe it to each other to support one another and to amplify one another's work. And so where I can personally amplify your work, I will. Where JFF or BGV or the other organizations that I work with can, we will as well. But let's connect.
Excellent. All right. So with that, we'll wrap things up here. Christina, super appreciate you coming on the call today, sharing all this information, and really making for an awesome discussion. Much appreciated.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day and week.
All right. Thank you, Christina. Bye.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining.